George Parr, you're a senior planner at the Ministry of Defence.
I am, yes.
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 And you must be very preoccupied at the moment with the possible war against Iraq.
We're thrilled. We're thrilled. We're looking forward to it tremendously. Of course, it's what we do, war. Defence is the name, attack is the game. That's our motto.
Yes. So you must be feverishly making preparations at the moment.
Oh, we are, because it's our job to make sure that our soldiers have got the best possible equipment.
Yes.
And it's fine-tuned to a peak of perfection. And we've been working tremendously hard on that. Last year, for example, we had a huge military exercise. In fact, the biggest deployment of British troops since the Gulf War in the Persian Gulf in Oman.
In Oman?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
This was Operation Swift Sword.
That's right, exactly,
wasn't it?
Yes.
And did you choose Oman because the terrain and the climate were very similar to Iraq?
Yes. Actually, because it's very close to Iraq, of course.
Yes,
In fact, it was tremendously useful from that point.
And was the operation a success?
Tremendous success, yes. We learned an enormous amount.
Such as?
Well, we learned never to get into one of our helicopters. Our helicopters are, of course, designed for operations in Northern Europe.
Of course, yes.
And under those conditions, normal European conditions, the rotor blades, you know, things that go around, keep it up, they have a life expectancy of about 500 hours. Now, we found in Oman, in desert conditions, this was somewhat reduced.
Reduced to what?
27 hours.
Did this come as a surprise?
It did to the pilots.
Yes.
And we also had similar problems with the Challengers.
Well, the Challenger tank, this is the British Army's main battle tank,
Battle tank, yes, and a very, very formidable weapon, particularly when it's able to move about.
Was it not able to move about in Oman?
One of the most interesting things that we discovered out there in Oman was that in the deserts of the Middle East, you can at times get large quantities of sand.
I believe you often do.
Do you? Yes. Well, certainly our experience supports that theory. And what happens is that the sand, you see, gets into the air filters of the Challenger tanks, and clogs them up. Now, of course, the Challenger tank is designed for operations in Northern Europe. And under those conditions, an air filter would be expected to last about a year. Once again, in the desert, this was slightly reduced.
To what?
4 hours.
So you couldn't use the tank?
No, not for shooting people and moving about. No, it's a small cocktail parties and that sort of thing. But apart from the prevalence of sand, the heat is another thing that you get in the deserts of the Middle East. In fact, some of our older vehicles, the engines got so hot that the only way to keep them running was to turn on the heaters in the cabs full on. But then the drivers got so hot they had to get out every few minutes.
Doesn't sound very efficient.
Well, no, but you have to remember that these vehicles were designed for operations in Northern Europe.
Yes. And of course you had other problems with the armor's assault rifle, rather well-publicised problems with the sand and the dust getting into the mechanism and jamming the gun.
Yes. Well, of course there has been some very unfortunate negative publicity about this gun. The AS-80A2 is standard issue British rifle. It's a lethal weapon, particularly to anybody trying to fire it. It is completely reliable, provided you take elementary precautions. If every time you fire it, you take it apart and oil it.
Of course, in the middle of the battle, there wouldn't really be time to do that.
Oh, you have to find time. You have to find time. It's the boredom, you see. But you see, the soldiers don't like, the desert. It's very, very hot, and the sand, and we found that even the uniforms are too heavy, the tents were too hot, and in Oman, the soldiers' boots melted.
What did you do about that?
Well, we didn't do everything because we were at home planning. But what they did was in certain circumstances, some of the soldiers could locally buy their own boots,
You're making this up, aren't you?
No. Everything I'm telling you is actually factually true.
Excuse me, General, but it does seem to me that the British Army seems rather ill-equipped to fight a battle in the Middle East, because your battle communication system, what's that called?
The ptarmigan?
The ptarmigan. Yeah. Now, that didn't work in Oman, did it?
No, that's very misleading to say that. Very misleading. It is true it doesn't work in the desert, but it doesn't work anywhere else either.
Because I remember that in Kosovo, soldiers were reduced to relying on their own mobile phones to contact other units, weren't they?
Yes, they were. Yes, we couldn't do that in Oman because there isn't the coverage. And
well, presumably they wouldn't be in Iraq either.
Oh, we don't know. We don't know. It is possible that Saddam Hussein, as well as building up his chemical, biological, and nuclear capability, is also developing a mobile phone network. Certainly, it would be useful if one of our tank commanders, it would be very useful if he could get out of his tank, get on his mobile, and say, my tank is seized up, the rotor blades have fallen off the helicopter, the gun has caught fire, my rifle is jammed, and my boots are melting, I await further instructions. And he can send a little picture of himself doing it.
That's true. Absolutely true. Yeah. So what would you say was the greatest lesson that you learned in Oman?
It's blindingly obvious, really. If we are to mount a successful military campaign against Saddam Hussein, we must, at all costs, we must get him to come and fight us in Northern Europe. You see, because then all our equipment would work, and there'd be a political dividend too, you see, because the moment he invaded Poland, everybody would agree to attack him, you see.
It's true, but if for some reason he can't be persuaded to invade Poland...
Yes. Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
Yes.
And the war actually takes place in Iraq,
yes.
And it's just ourselves and the Americans. It's hard to see what sort of military support we'll be able to offer the Americans.
Well, to be quite frank, I don't think the Americans are all that bothered about our military support. They can do all that side of it themselves, really.
So what is it that they want from us?
From us? Dead bodies, I think, is what they want. You see, I think if a war does occur in Iraq, it's very important for Washington that not all the bodies in the body bags will be American.
So this is what's been called the blood sacrifice.
No, exactly. Tony Blair's exact words, the blood sacrifice. Yes, and as Tony Blair himself said, what matters is that we stand up and be counted.
Or in our case, fall down.
Fall down and be counted, yes.
General, thank you very much indeed.
It's a great pleasure.
Thank you.